The rain came down in sheets the day I arrived, turning the gravel driveway into a mirror of gray sky and darker fears. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I pulled up to the small cabin. Modest, tucked between towering pines, exactly what I had asked for. Anonymous, forgettable, safe. The scent of wet earth and pine needles filled my lungs as I stepped out of the car, my sneakers sinking slightly into mud. Everything I owned fit into 3 suitcases and 2 cardboard boxes. 26 years of life reduced to what could be carried in a single trip. My blonde hair darkened by the rain, stuck to my cheeks as I fumbled with the key the pack liaison had mailed me. The metal was cold, unfamiliar, nothing like the ornate silver keys I'd left behind. I didn't belong here. That much was obvious from the moment I'd submitted my transfer request to the Crescent Ridge Pack. They'd accepted me without question. Desperate for members, I'd heard after years of dwindling numbers. They didn't know what I was running from. They didn't know that 3 states away, someone was still looking for me. The door creaked open, revealing a space that smelled of dust and disuse. One main room serving as kitchen and living area, a bedroom barely big enough for a double bed, a bathroom with rust stains in the sink. It was perfect. No one would think to look for me here. I set my boxes down and walked to the window, pushing aside the thin curtain. Clear's throat. Through the rain, I could make out other cabins scattered through the woods, smoke rising from chimneys despite the summer warmth. Pack members seeking comfort, seeking connection. Things I'd learned to live without. My phone buzzed in my pocket, my stomach clenched before I even looked at the screen. Unknown number, you can't hide forever. I deleted it immediately, fingers shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Then Clear's throat turned it off completely, removed the battery and shoved it into the bottom of my suitcase. He'd found my number again. That meant I had maybe a week before he figured out where I'd gone, maybe less. The knock at my door 2 hours later made me freeze mid-motion, a can of soup halfway to the cabinet. "Hello," a woman's voice, warm and curious. "I'm Eden from 3 cabins down, saw you arrive and thought I'd bring some welcome supplies." I forced myself to breathe, to move, to open the door. The woman standing on my porch was perhaps 40, with kind eyes and an armful of groceries that looked far more expensive than anything I could currently afford. "Thank you," I managed, stepping aside to let her in. "I'm Charlotte, just transferred in from the Southern Territories, right?" Eden set the bags on my counter, began unpacking without asking. "We don't get many transfers from down there, must be quite a change." Everything about her demeanor was open, friendly. It made my chest ache. I'd learned not to trust kindness. "It's fine," I said quietly. I needed a fresh start. Eden's hands paused on a box of tea, and when she looked at me, I saw understanding in her eyes. Not pity, understanding. "This is a good place for that," she said softly. "Crescent Ridge isn't fancy, but we look after our own." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "There's a pack gathering tomorrow night," Eden continued, arranging fresh bread and cheese on my sparse counter. "Just a casual thing. Bonfire, food. Chance to meet everyone. Alpha will be there. He likes to meet new members personally." My stomach tightened. "I don't. I'm not really good with crowds." "No pressure," Eden assured me, but I could see the concern in her expression. "But Charlotte, hear your pack now. That means something. That means you don't have to face things alone anymore." After she left, I sat on the floor of my empty cabin and let myself cry for the first time in months. Quiet tears that I'd learned to suppress, learned to hide. Because showing weakness was dangerous, because vulnerability was a weapon others used against you. The sun was setting when I finally stood, washed my face and began unpacking. I placed my few books on the windowsill, hung my clothes in the narrow closet, made the bed with sheets that smelled of lavender, Eden's contribution. The motions were automatic, soothing. As darkness fell, I noticed lights flickering on in other cabins, families gathering for dinner, couples laughing on porches, and then through the trees to my right I saw a larger structure, not quite a mansion, but substantial, built of stone and dark wood. No lights in the windows, no movement, but something about it made the hair on my arm stand up. "That's the Alpha's house," a voice said behind me, and I spun around so fast I nearly fell. A young man stood at the edge of my property, hands raised in apology. He looked barely 20 with red hair and a sheepish grin. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you, I'm Owen. I live in the cabin across the way." My heart was still racing, but I forced a smile. "Charlotte." "Yeah, Eden mentioned you'd arrived." He jerked his chin toward the dark house through the trees. "Alpha doesn't live there anymore, mostly. He's got a place on the other side of the territory, but that's his family home. Sometimes he stays there when he needs to be alone." There was something in the way Owen said it, a mixture of respect and weariness that made me curious despite myself. He's a good alpha, Owen continued as if I'd asked. Took over young after his father died. Brought the pack back from the edge of collapse. But he seemed to search for the right word. Intense keeps to himself. Some people find him intimidating. I thought of the alpha I'd left behind. Charming in public, cruel in private, intense could mean 1,000 different things. Anyway, Owen said, taking a step back, welcome to Crescent Ridge. If you need anything, I'm usually around, and seriously, come to the bonfire tomorrow. The pack's actually really friendly once you get past the initial awkwardness. After he left, I stood at my window for a long time, staring at that dark house through the trees. Something about it called to me, or maybe Clear's throat warned me. I couldn't tell which. That night, I dreamed of running through forests I didn't recognize. Chased by shadows that wore familiar faces, I woke gasping, tangled in unfamiliar sheets. My heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The cabin was silent around me. Outside, night sounds filtered through the thin walls, crickets, wind in the pines, the distant howl of a wolf, on patrol, normal sounds, safe sounds. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake coming here. Morning arrived with pale sunlight and the smell of rain-washed earth. I dressed in jeans and an old sweater, pulled my blonde hair into a ponytail, and ventured out to explore the territory. The pack liaison had sent maps, but paper couldn't capture the reality of the place. Crescent Ridge was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 60 families total, scattered across several square miles of forest and meadow. The pack house, a sprawling building that served as administrative center and community hub, sat at the heart of the territory. Beyond it, I could see gardens, a small school. What looked like training grounds. I kept to the edges, observing, watching the way people moved together, the easy camaraderie that spoke of years of shared history. Children played in yards while parents gardened or worked on home repairs. Elderly pack members sat on porches, faces turned to the suns. It looked peaceful. It looked like everything I'd thought I'd had before. You must be Charlotte. The voice came from my left, deep, measured with an undercurrent of something I couldn't name. I turned and found myself looking up at a man who seemed to occupy more space than his physical form should allow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of stormy seas. His face was striking, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a dark Henley, but there was nothing simple about the way he carried himself. Power radiated from him like heat from a fire, controlled, contained, but undeniable. Clear's throat, "I'm Sebastian," he said, and I realized with a jolt that I was looking at the alpha. "Welcome to Crescent Ridge." My mouth went dry. "Thank you," I managed, hating how small my voice sounded. His eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to look away, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. I'd learned that looking away was seen as submission, and submission invited cruelty. But instead of the predatory satisfaction I expected, I saw something else flicker across his face. Curiosity maybe, or concern. "Eden tells me, you're settling in." "Well," he said, "she's been very kind. That's Eden." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Gun before I could be sure I'd seen it. The gathering tonight. I hope you'll come." I know adjusting to a new pack can be overwhelming, but connection is important. Especially for those who've been, he paused, chose his words carefully, isolated. Something about the way he said it made me wonder what he saw when he looked at me. Could he tell? Could he sense the fear I tried so hard to bury? "I'll try," I said, which was as close to a commitment as I could manage. Sebastian nodded slowly, still watching me with those storm-gray eyes. "If you need anything, Charlotte, my door is always open," Clear's throat literally. "I'm staying in my family home for a few weeks. The one next to your cabin." The world tilted slightly. Next door, the Alpha's king of Crescent Ridge, because that's what he was. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. Lived next door. I thought I swallowed. "Owen said you had a place on the other side of the territory." "I do, but I'm overseeing some construction here, and it's easier to be close." His expression remained neutral, but there was something watchful in his eyes. "Does that bother you?" Yes, my instinct screamed. "Run! Hide! Powerful males are dangerous." "No," I said aloud. "Why would it?" He didn't answer. Just continued to study me in that unnerving way, as if he could see straight through to all the broken pieces I tried to keep hidden. "I should go," I said, taking a step back. "Things to unpack." Of course, he inclined his head slightly. "I'll see you tonight, Charlotte." It wasn't a question. I walked back to my cabin on shaking legs, feeling his gaze on my back the entire way. When I finally closed my door behind me, I leaned against it and tried to calm my racing heart. This was supposed to be a refuge, a place to disappear, to heal, to rebuild some semblance of a life. Instead, I'd landed right next door to the most powerful wolf I'd ever encountered, an alpha whose mere presence made my instincts war between terror and something else. Something I didn't dare name. Through the window, I could see smoke beginning to rise from his chimney. He was home, and somehow that felt like both a promise and a threat. The afternoon stretched before me like an empty canvas I didn't know how to fill. I tried to distract myself with mundane tasks, organizing the small kitchen, folding clothes that were already folded, scrubbing a bathtub that wasn't particularly dirty, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. But my thoughts kept returning to Sebastian, to the weight of his presence, the careful way he'd chosen his words, especially for those who've been isolated. What had he meant by that? What had he seen in me that I'd worked so hard to conceal? Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard movement from the house next door, the sound of a door opening and closing, footsteps on gravel. I moved to the window instinctively, then caught myself and stepped back. The last thing I needed was to be caught spying on the alpha, but curiosity won out, and I peeked through the curtain just enough to see Sebastian carrying firewood from a shed to his porch. He moved with economical grace, each motion purposeful. His shirt stretched across his shoulders as he worked, and I found myself noticing details I shouldn't. The strength in his forearms, the way his hair fell forward when he bent to stack the logs. I jerked away from the window, heat flooding my cheeks. What was wrong with me? I'd come here to hide, to heal, not to develop an inconvenient attraction to the one person whose attention I absolutely could not afford. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since the soup last night. I forced myself to make a sandwich with Eden's bread and cheese, eating mechanically while watching the clock tick toward evening. The bonfire started at 7. I could show up for an hour, make an appearance, then retreat back to my cabin. Simple, except nothing felt simple anymore. At 6:30, I changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that didn't cling too tightly. I left my hair down, hoping it would hide my face if I needed to blend into the background. Old habits. The walk to the pack house took 15 minutes through winding forest paths. I could hear the gathering before I saw it. Laughter, music, the crackle of a large fire. My steps slowed as anxiety clawed at my throat. "You don't have to do this," my mind whispered. "You could turn back. They won't even notice." But Eden would notice, and Sebastian had said he'd see me tonight in that tone that suggested he'd know if I didn't come. The clearing behind the pack house had been transformed. A massive bonfire roared at the center, surrounded by logs for seating and tables laden with food. At least 50 people milled around. Families with children, teenagers clustered in groups, elderly wolves watching from chairs. Someone had thoughtfully provided. String lights had been hung between the trees, casting everything in warm golden light. It looked like something from a dream or a memory of what life could be if you were lucky enough to be wanted. Charlotte. Eden appeared at my elbow, her smile genuinely delighted. "You came. Come on, let me introduce you to some people." Before I could protest, she was guiding me into the crowd, names blurred together. Jennifer, who ran the pack school, Thomas and his husband, Michael, who managed the gardens, Sarah, a healer with kind eyes and gentle hands. Everyone welcomed me with warmth that felt almost aggressive in its sincerity. I smiled and nodded and tried to memorize faces, all while keeping track of exits and maintaining awareness of my surroundings. Another old habit. "The food's incredible," Eden said, leading me to the tables. "Everyone contributes something. It's kind of our thing." Gathering and sharing helps maintain pack bonds. I loaded a plate with items I wasn't sure I could eat, my appetite having vanished the moment I'd entered the clearing, but it gave my hand something to do, a purpose for being there. "He's watching you, you know." I turned to find Owen beside me, his expression knowing what, Alpha Sebastian. Owen tilted his head slightly and I followed his gaze across the fire. Sebastian stood on the opposite side of the clearing, engaged in conversation with several older pack members, but his eyes, those storm gray eyes, were fixed on me. "He's been tracking your every move since you arrived. That's unusual for him." My heart kicked into an uncomfortable rhythm. I'm new. He's probably just being vigilant, maybe. Owen didn't sound convinced. Or maybe he senses something. Alphas have instincts about these things, especially ones like Sebastian. He's more perceptive than most. The idea of Sebastian sensing anything about me made my skin prickle with unease. I'd worked so hard to become invisible, to suppress everything that might draw attention. "Come sit with us," Owen said, gesturing to where a group of young adults had claimed logs near the fire, where the unofficial welcoming committee for anyone under 30. I followed him, grateful for the distraction. The group accepted me easily. Jade, a fierce-looking woman with multiple piercings who worked in pack security. Ryan and his sister Nicole, twins who finished each other's sentences. Marcus, quiet and observant, who I learned was training to be the pack's beta. They asked questions where I was from, what I did for work, how I was finding Crescent Ridge, and I answered with carefully constructed half-truths. I'd been a bookkeeper down south, needed a change of scenery, heard good things about smaller packs. No one pressed for details, for which I was grateful. The evening wore on, the fire burning hot and bright. Children roasted marshmallows under watchful parental eyes. Someone brought out a guitar, and soon people were singing old pack songs about moon and forest and belonging. The music wrapped around me like a gentle hand, and I felt something in my chest begin to unknot. This was what pack was supposed to be. Community, safety, home. May I sit? Sebastian's voice cut through my thoughts, and I looked up to find him standing beside my log. The conversation around me had quieted, everyone suddenly very interested in their drinks or the fire. Of course, Alpha, I said, because what else could I say? He settled beside me, and I was immediately aware of his proximity, the warmth radiating from his body, the subtle scent of pine and something darker, more complex. He didn't crowd me, left appropriate space between us, but I still felt surrounded by his presence. You're enjoying yourself? He asked. Everyone's been very welcoming, but you're not comfortable. It wasn't a question. He turned to look at me fully, and in the firelight his features seemed carved from stone, all clear's throat-sharp edges and shadows. You're cataloging exits, watching for threats, holding yourself like someone who's learned that relaxation is dangerous. My breath caught. No one had ever read me so accurately, so quickly. I'm just adjusting, I managed. Adjusting to what, Charlotte? His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath the gentleness. To a new pack, or to the idea that not every alpha is a monster. The words hit like a physical blow. I stood abruptly, my plate clattering to the ground. I should go. Wait. Sebastian rose with me, one hand reaching out but not quite touching. I'm sorry, that was too direct. But I need you to understand something. You're safe here. Whatever you're running from, whoever hurt you, they have no power in my territory. You don't know anything about me, I whispered. No, he agreed, but I know fear when I see it. I know trauma, and I know that you flinch when anyone moves too quickly, that you position yourself near exits, that you watch everyone like you're waiting for them to turn on you. His expression softened fractionally. I know because I've seen it before. In others, in myself, I stared at him. This powerful alpha who commanded respect and territory and the loyalty of dozens. You? My father was not a kind man, Sebastian said quietly. He ruled through fear and violence. By the time I was old enough to challenge him, the damage was done to me, to the pack. I've spent the last 8 years trying to build something different here, something better. Around us the gathering continued, but we might as well have been alone. Everyone had strategically shifted away, giving their alpha privacy. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I see you trying to make yourself invisible, and I want you to know that here you don't have to hide. He held my gaze and I saw something raw in his eyes, understanding, born from experience. You're allowed to take up space, Charlotte. You're allowed to exist without apologizing for it. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then let me help you remember. The offer hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to examine. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the pack house. Raised voices, urgent tones. Sebastian's entire demeanor shifted in an instant from gentle to commanding. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward the disturbance. But I couldn't just stand there. I followed at a distance, arriving in time to see Marcus, and several others gathered around a young woman I hadn't met. She was crying, her hands shaking as she tried to explain something. Someone was watching the perimeter, Marcus reported to Sebastian. Na saw them while she was heading home, male unfamiliar scent. He ran when she called out. Ice flooded my veins. No, it was too soon, he couldn't have found me yet. Description. Sebastian's voice was clipped. Authoritative tall dark hair moved like a trained fighter. Na managed between sobs. He was near the southern border, close to the new cabins. Near my cabin. The world tilted and I grabbed a nearby tree to steady myself. Sebastian's eyes found mine across the crowd and I saw the exact moment understanding clicked into place. Charlotte, he crossed to me in 3 long strides. Is this connected to you? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. All I could do was nod. Sebastian's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Marcus, double the perimeter patrols. I want wolves on the southern border every hour. No one enters this territory without my knowledge. He turned back to me. You're not going back to your cabin tonight, but that's not a request. His hand settled on my shoulder, steady and grounding. "You'll stay at my house where I can protect you. And then you're going to tell me everything." Fear and relief wared within me. I'd spent so long hiding, so determined to handle this alone. But Sebastian's presence was solid beside me, unmovable as stone. "He'll kill you if you get in his way," I whispered. Something dangerous flashed in Sebastian's eyes. "He can try." The walk back to his house felt surreal. Eden appeared with my overnight bag. Apparently, she'd anticipated this before I had. Owen and Jade flanked us like guards, though Sebastian had assured them it wasn't necessary. His home was larger inside than I'd expected. Warm hardwood floors, comfortable furniture that looked lived in rather than decorative. Bookshelves crammed with volumes on everything from Pack history to poetry. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. "Guest room is upstairs, second door on the right," Sebastian said. "There's a bathroom attached. Take whatever time you need. I'll make tea." Tea? As if this were a normal evening. As if my past hadn't just crashed into my present with the force of a freight train. But I did as he suggested, climbing stairs with legs that felt disconnected from my body. The guest room was simply furnished but comfortable. A large bed with a thick quilt, more bookshelves, a window that overlooked the forest. I sank onto the edge of the bed and let myself shake. He'd found me. Despite everything, changing my name, leaving no forwarding information, choosing a pack so small and remote it barely registered on most maps, he'd found me. A knock at the door made me jump. "Charlotte, may I come in?" Sebastian entered, carrying 2 mugs of tea that smelled of chamomile and honey. He handed me one, then settled into an armchair by the window, giving me space. "His name is Damien," I said, the words scraping my throat like broken glass. "He was my alpha, my mate." Sebastian's expression darkened, but he remained silent, letting me speak at my own pace. It started slowly. Little criticisms, jealousy, wanting to know where I was every moment. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, anchoring myself. By the time I realized what was happening, I was trapped. He'd isolated me from everyone. Clear's throat convinced the pack I was unstable. No one would have believed me if I tried to get help. "But you got out," Sebastian said softly. "I planned it for months, saved money in secret, created a new identity, left in the middle of the night while he was away on pack business." My voice cracked. I thought I'd been so careful. "But he has resources, connections, and he doesn't like losing what he considers his. You're not his." The words carried absolute certainty. You never were. A true mate bond doesn't work that way. It's partnership, not ownership. I looked up at him through tears I could no longer contain. "How do you know I'm telling the truth? For all you know, I'm the unstable one." That's what everyone in my old pack thought. Sebastian sat down his tea and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I've seen real instability, Charlotte. I've seen manipulation and abuse. And I know the difference between someone who's dangerous and someone who's been taught to believe they're worthless." His eyes held mine. "You're not unstable. You're surviving. There's a difference." Something broke open inside me. A dam I'd built brick by careful brick, now crumbling under the weight of his belief in me. "What if he doesn't stop?" I whispered. "What if he keeps coming until someone gets hurt? Then I'll handle it." Sebastian's voice carried the ring of an oath. "You have my protection, Charlotte. My word is alpha. Damien can come if he wants, but he'll find Crescent Ridge is not the easy target he's expecting." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe that someone could actually stand between me and the nightmare I'd been running from. But belief was a luxury I'd learned to live without. Outside, night had fully fallen. Through the window, I could see lights from other cabins, my neighbors going about their peaceful lives. Tomorrow, I'd figure out next steps. Tomorrow, I'd decide whether to run again or trust in the protection of an alpha I barely knew. Tonight, I let myself feel safe for the first time in years, even if it was only an illusion. Even if it couldn't possibly last. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For one disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then everything from the previous night came rushing back. Damien, the stranger at the border, Sebastian's promise of protection. I dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, finger-combing my blonde hair into some semblance of order before venturing downstairs. Sebastian stood in the kitchen reading something Clear's throat on his phone while coffee brewed. He changed into fresh jeans and a dark blue shirt that made his eyes look even more gray. "Morning," he said, glancing up. "There's coffee and I can make breakfast if you're hungry." The domesticity of it felt jarring. I should probably get back to my cabin. I have things to do. Marcus is there now, checking the perimeter and installing better locks. Sebastian poured coffee into 2 mugs without asking if I wanted any. You're not going anywhere alone until we know more about who was watching last night. I bristled at the command in his tone, even as I recognized it as concern. I can't just hide here forever. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be smart. He slid a mug across the counter to me. Eden's organizing a rotation. Pack members who will walk with you if you need to go anywhere. Think of them as friends, not guards. Friends who just happen to be monitoring my every move. Friends who care about your safety. His expression softened. Charlotte, I know this feels like your freedom is being restricted, but right now caution isn't weakness, it's survival. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, hating that he was right. How long? As long as it takes to secure the territory and figure out Damien's next move. Sebastian leaned in against the counter, studying me. Tell me about him, not the abuse. I know that's painful, but tactically, how does he think? What motivates him? The question surprised me. Most people either wanted the gruesome details or nothing at all. But Sebastian was approaching this like a chess game, trying to understand his opponent. He's methodical, I said slowly. Patient. He won't rush in unless he's certain of victory. And he's proud. Losing me would have been a public humiliation in his pack. He can't let it stand. So this isn't just about getting you back. It's about saving face. Everything with Damien is about image, power, control. I took a sip of coffee, grateful for something to do with my hands. He'll have told his pack some story that makes me the villain. Probably that I was unstable, that I ran away in some kind of episode, that he's trying to bring me home for my own good. Sebastian's jaw tightened. And if he shows up here with that story, then you'll have to decide if you believe him or me. The old fear crept back in, cold and familiar. He's very convincing, Charlotte. Sebastian waited until I met his eyes. I've already made that decision last night, when I saw how you reacted to the news of an intruder. This morning when I watched you wake up looking for escape routes before you even fully opened your eyes. I don't need to hear his version of events to know who's telling the truth. Something in my chest loosened slightly. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Because it's the right thing to do, he said it simply, as if it were obvious. And because I know what it's like to live under the thumb of someone who uses power as a weapon. I swore when I became Alpha that Crescent Ridge would be different. That means protecting those who need it, no matter how inconvenient or dangerous. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. We have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Damien just contacted the Regional Pack Council. He's filed a formal complaint claiming I'm harboring a fugitive mate who's mentally unstable and dangerous to herself and others. Sebastian's voice was tight with controlled anger. He's requesting a council hearing to determine your status. The room spun. No, he can't. He can. And he clears throat has, which means in 3 days we'll have council representatives here to investigate. Sebastian sat down his phone with deliberate care. This is actually good news. How is this possibly good news? Because it forces everything into the open. Council hearings have rules, procedures. Damien can't just take you. He'll have to prove his claims in front of neutral arbiters. Sebastian's eyes gleamed with something sharp and calculating, and will have the opportunity to prove that you left of your own free will, that his treatment of you constituted grounds for bond severance, hope flickered, dangerous, and fragile. Can we do that? Prove it? Do you have any evidence? Medical records, witnesses, anything documented? I shook my head miserably. He was too careful, and he'd convinced everyone I was the problem. Clears throat. Even the pack healer thought my injuries were self-inflicted, accidents caused by my supposed instability. Sebastian was quiet for a moment, thinking, then we'll need to build a different case. Character witnesses documentation of your behavior here. Stable, rational, no signs of the instability Damien claims, and we'll need to prepare you for questioning. The council will want to hear your testimony directly. The thought of facing Damien again, of having to recount everything in front of strangers who might not believe me, made my throat close with panic. Hey, Sebastian moved around the counter, stopping just close enough that I could feel his warmth without being crowded. You won't be alone in this, I'll be there. Eden, Marcus, everyone who's gotten to know you will all stand with you. And the council may be bureaucratic, but they're not monsters. They'll listen. What if they don't believe me? The question came out small, childlike. Then we have bigger problems with the council system than I thought. His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently squeezed my shoulder, but I don't think it'll come to that. Truth has a weight to it, Charlotte. People can feel it, even when they don't want to. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Sebastian brought in a lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria, who specialized in pack law and mate bond disputes. She questioned me for hours, taking notes, building a timeline, identifying weaknesses in Damien's story. His biggest mistake was claiming you're dangerous to yourself and others, Victoria said during one of our sessions. Because you've been here almost a week now, and there hasn't been a single incident, no erratic behavior, no violence, nothing that would support his narrative. Meanwhile, he's the one sending people to spy on our territory, which makes him look like the aggressor. Eden and Sarah, the pack healer, documented everything about my time in Crescent Ridge. My calm demeanor, my willingness to integrate, the way I'd helped Eden with her garden and listened patiently while Sarah explained pack medical protocols, small things. But they painted a picture of someone stable and rational. Marcus worked with security to ensure the hearing would be safe. Neutral ground in the pack house with guards posted, emergency protocols in place. Damien won't try anything stupid with the council present, he assured me. But we're not taking chances. Through it all, Sebastian was a constant presence, not a lot hovering, but there working in his study while I practiced testimony with Victoria, appearing with food when I forgot to eat, suggesting walks through the territory when the cabin walls felt too close. On one of these walks, 2 days before the hearing, we ended up at a creek that ran through the heart of Crescent Ridge. The water rushed over smooth stones, creating a sound that was almost musical. I sat on a fallen log, and Sebastian settled beside me. "Tell me something," he said after a while. "Before Damien, what were you like?" The question caught me off guard. I'm not sure I remember. Try. I closed my eyes, reaching back past the pain and fear to the girl I'd been. I liked books, old ones with worn covers and pages that smelled like vanilla. I wanted to be a teacher, maybe work with children. A sad smile touched my lips. I laughed easily, trusted people, believed that love was supposed to make you feel safe, not scared. "You can have that again," Sebastian said quietly. "Not the naive trust. You've learned better, and that's probably wise. But the rest of it, the joy, the dreams, they're not gone, just buried. How do you know?" "Because I found mine again." He picked up a smooth stone, turning it over in his hands. "After my father died, I was angry all the time, bitter. I couldn't imagine ever feeling anything else. But slowly, with help, I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating the pain into who you are without letting it define you." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the scars he carried beneath the surface, not physical ones, but the kind that shaped how you moved through the world. "Do you ever wish you could go back, be who you were before?" "No." His answer was immediate, certain. "Because that person wouldn't have the strength to lead this pack, wouldn't understand the people who come here broken, looking for safety. Pain has a purpose, Charlotte. It teaches empathy, compassion. The question is whether you let it make you hard or help you become more human." "More human," I repeated softly. Strange thing for a werewolf to aspire to. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his usually serious face. "Fair point. More whole then, more yourself." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the creek and the wind in the trees. For the first time since arriving, I felt something other than fear or exhaustion. Something that might have been peace. "Sebastian," I said eventually, "why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just duty or the right thing. This is personal for you." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then because I failed someone once years ago before I fully understood the signs. "A pack member, young woman about your age. She came to me saying she was afraid of her mate, but I didn't act quickly enough. By the time I did, he swallowed hard. She didn't survive, and I swore I'd never let that happen again. Never doubt, never hesitate, never fail to protect someone asking for help." Tears stung my eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just survive this. Let's build a life here." That's how you honor what happened to her. By refusing to become another statistic. The morning of the hearing dawned cold and gray, matching my mood. I dressed carefully in clothes Victoria had helped me choose, professional but not severe, put together without looking like I was trying too hard. The goal was to appear stable, credible, sympathetic. I looked like someone playing dress-up in a stranger's life. Sebastian knocked on my cabin door precisely at 9 o'clock. He dressed formally too, dark slacks and a crisp white shirt that emphasized his natural authority. "Ready?" "No, but I suppose that doesn't matter." "It matters," he said seriously. "But I have faith in you. You're stronger than you think." The pack house's main hall had been converted into a makeshift courtroom. 3 council members sat at a long table at the front. 2 men and a woman, all older, all radiating the kind of power that came from decades of authority. Pack members filled the chairs along the walls, a show of support that made my throat tight. And there on the opposite side of the room stood Damien. He looked exactly as I remembered, tall and handsome. with dark hair styled perfectly and eyes the color of amber. He wore a concerned expression, the mask of a worried mate seeking his lost love. When he saw me, those eyes widened with what looked like relief. "Charlotte," he said, moving forward. "Thank God, I've been so worried. That's close enough." Sebastian's voice cracked like a whip, and Damien stopped. "The hearing hasn't started. There will be no contact between the parties." Davin's expression shifted fractionally, a flash of anger before the mask returned. "Of course, Alpha Sebastian. I understand you're just protecting what you believe is best, but I hope you'll understand when this is resolved, that Charlotte needs help, not enablement. We'll see what the council determines," Sebastian replied evenly. The lead council member, a silver-haired woman named Miriam, called the hearing to order. The next hour was a blur of formal statements and procedure. Damien presented his case first, his voice full of pained concern as he described my supposed mental decline, my erratic behavior, my midnight flight that left him devastated and afraid for my safety. He was convincing, horribly, dangerously convincing. Then it was my turn. I stood on shaking legs and told my truth, the isolation, the control, the way he'd systematically destroyed my confidence and connections, until I had nothing left but fear. I kept my voice steady, my facts clear, my emotion contained. When I finished, Miriam studied me thoughtfully. "These are serious allegations, Miss Charlotte. Do you have any proof?" "No," I admitted. He was too careful for that. "Then it's your word against his." She didn't sound unsympathetic, just realistic. "Not quite," Sebastian interjected. "We have character evidence. Multiple pack members who can attest to Charlotte's stability and rational behavior during her time here. We have medical documentation from our healer showing no signs of mental illness or instability. And we have testimony about unusual surveillance on our territory that began shortly after Charlotte arrived." The hearing continued. Eden spoke about my kindness and helpfulness. Sarah presented medical findings. Marcus described the intruder and Damon's aggressive demands. Through it all, I watched Damon's mask begin to crack. "This is ridiculous," he finally snapped. "She's my mate. I have the right. You have no rights here." Miriam interrupted coldly. "Continue, Alpha Sebastian." And then Sebastian did something I didn't expect. He looked directly at Damien and said, "I have a question for you. If Charlotte is truly unstable and dangerous to herself, why didn't you seek council intervention months ago? Why wait until she left to suddenly express this concern?" Damon faltered. I was trying to handle it privately. Pack business. Or perhaps..." Sebastian continued, his voice deadly quiet. "There was nothing to handle until she found the courage to leave. And now you're using the council system to continue the same pattern of control and manipulation you've always employed." The room went utterly silent. Miriam leaned forward. "Mr. Damien, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you ever physically harm Miss Charlotte?" "Of course not," he said immediately. Too quickly. "I would never." "Then why does she flinch when you move?" Miriam's eyes were sharp. "I've been watching her this entire hearing. She's composed, articulate, rational until you gesture or stand. Then she reacts like someone expecting violence. That kind of response doesn't develop from nothing." Damien's face flushed. "She's playing you all. Enough." Miriam's voice carried absolute authority. "This council finds no evidence of the instability claimed. Furthermore, we find significant evidence of a hostile mate bond that Miss Charlotte was right to flee. The bond is hereby declared severed. Miss Charlotte is free to remain with Crescent Ridge under Alpha Sebastian's protection, and you, Mr. Damien, are barred from this territory and from any further contact with her. Violation will result in council sanctions." The world tilted. Free. I was free. Damien's face contorted with rage. "You can't. This is we can and we have. This hearing is concluded." Miriam stood signaling the other council members. "Alpha Sebastian, ensure he leaves your territory immediately." What happened next occurred in seconds, but felt like slow motion. Damien lunged toward me, fury overriding sense. Sebastian moved like liquid darkness, intercepting him before he'd crossed half the distance. There was a brief struggle. Then Damien was on the floor with Sebastian's hand at his throat. "Touch her," Sebastian said softly, dangerously, "and council sanctions will be the least of your concerns." Marcus and 2 other pack members hauled Damien to his feet and escorted him out, his threats and tests fading as they dragged him toward the territory border, and I stood there shaking, hardly able to believe it was over. The aftermath of the hearing was oddly anticlimactic. The council members departed with professional efficiency, promising to file the formal documentation within the week. Pack members congratulated me with gentle touches and warm smiles, but I could barely process their words. Everything felt distant, muffled, as if I were underwater. Sebastian guided me out of the pack house with a hand at my elbow, steady and grounding. Eden appeared with my coat. Victoria squeezed my hand and promised to send copies of all official documents, and then suddenly we were walking back through the forest toward the cabins. "I need to sit down," I said when we reached the creek. My legs were trembling, threatening to give out. Sebastian helped me to the same fallen log we'd sat on days before. He settled beside me close enough that our shoulders touched, and for several minutes we just sat there listening to the water rush over stones. "It's really over," I finally whispered. "The legal part? Yes. The council's ruling is binding." Sebastian turned to look at me. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know." I wrapped my arms around myself. I thought I'd feel relieved, happy, but I just feel empty. "That's normal," he said gently. "You've been running on adrenaline and fear for so long that now that it's gone, there's just space. The emotions will come later, probably when you least expect them." "Have you been through something like this?" "Not exactly like this, but I've had moments where a threat I'd been preparing for suddenly vanished, and the absence of danger felt more disorienting than its presence." He picked up a twig, turning it over in his fingers. "Give yourself time, Charlotte. Healing isn't linear." We sat in silence until the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the skies in shades of amber and rose. Finally, Sebastian stood and offered me his hand. "Come on, you shouldn't be alone tonight." Back at his house, he made dinner while I curled up on his couch with a blanket Eden had apparently left earlier. The domesticity of it was surreal. An alpha king cooking pasta in his kitchen while I watched the fire and tried to process everything that had happened. "Tell me about Crescent Ridge," I said when he brought over 2 plates. "How you built this." Sebastian settled into the armchair across from me, seeming to consider the question. It was Clear's throat broken when I inherited it. My father ran the pack like a dictatorship. Rules enforced through violence, loyalty demanded rather than earned, Clear's throat. People lived in fear, families left when they could. By the time I challenged him, we were down Clear's throat to maybe 30 members. "What made you challenge him?" "He killed someone." Sebastian's voice went flat. "An Omega who questioned one of his decisions in front of the pack. My father made an example of him. Clear's throat, and I realized that if I didn't act, I'd become complicit in everything he was doing." I set down my fork, no longer hungry. "Were you afraid?" "Terrified. I was 23, barely trained, and he was one of the most powerful alphas in the region. Everyone expected him to destroy me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But rage is a powerful motivator, and I'd spent my whole life studying him, learning his weaknesses. I knew exactly where to strike. And after I had to convince a traumatized pack that not all alphas were like him. That took Clear's throat years proving through action, not words, that I meant what I said about building something different." He gestured around the room. "This house was his. I almost burned it down. But Eden, she was one of the few who stayed, convinced me to keep it, to transform it into something new rather than destroy it. She said running from the past just gives it power. Smart woman, the smartest." Sebastian's expression softened. "She lost her mate to my father's cruelty, had every reason to leave, to hate me by association. Instead, she became the pack's heart, reminded everyone what we were fighting to build." I thought about Eden's kindness, the way she'd welcomed me without hesitation. "Clear's throat, she saw something in you worth staying for. She saw potential. That's different than worth." He met my eyes. "But maybe that's enough. Maybe we're all just potential waiting to be realized." Over the next few weeks, I began to settle into life at Crescent Ridge in a way I hadn't allowed myself before. The constant vigilance began to ease. I started accepting invitations, helping Eden with her garden, joining Sarah for herb gathering expeditions, even attending the weekly pack runs through the forest. The runs were hardest. Shifting had always been fraught with anxiety for me. Damien had used my wolf form as another means of control, criticizing everything from my size to my coloring, but running with the Crescent Ridge Pack was different. No hierarchy beyond basic safety protocols, no judgment, just the pure joy of movement and moonlight and belonging. Sebastian often ran beside me, his wolf, massive and dark against my smaller, pale form. He never crowded, never dominated, just maintained a steady presence that made me feel safe enough to fully let go. One night, about 3 weeks after the hearing, we'd ranged farther than usual. The pack had split into smaller groups, and somehow Sebastian and I ended up alone at the Teredo's northern border. We shifted back to human form, and I found myself sitting on a boulder, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "You're different lately," Sebastian said, leaning against a nearby tree. He'd pulled on the jeans he'd tied around his ankle before shifting, but remained shirtless, all lean muscle and moonlit skin. I forced my eyes back to the stars. Different how? Lighter. Less like you're carrying the weight of the world. He moved closer, settling onto the boulder beside me. It's good to see. I feel different. I admitted like I'm remembering who I was supposed to be. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only happens when you're truly at ease with someone. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of pine and earth and the distant promise of rain. Charlotte, Sebastian said eventually, his voice quieter. Can I ask you something personal? My heart rate kicked up, but not with fear. Okay, the mate bond with Damien. Did you ever actually feel it, or was it something he convinced you existed? The question surprised me. I'm not sure. I thought I felt something at first. Attraction. Connection. But looking back, I don't know if that was a real bond or just normal feelings that he exploited. Bonds can be forced, Sebastian said carefully, through manipulation, through magical means. Real mate bonds, true ones. They're supposed to feel like coming home, like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing. Have you ever felt that? No. He turned to look at me, and even in the dim light I could see the intensity in his eyes. Not until recently. The air between us changed, charged with something electric and terrifying and impossibly right. I should have pulled away, should have reminded myself that I wasn't ready. The trust took time. Instead, I leaned closer. Sebastian, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I'm not asking for anything, Charlotte. I just needed you to know. Whatever you feel or don't feel, whatever pace you need, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations, but I did feel something. Had been feeling it for weeks, maybe from that first moment in the forest when he'd looked at me and somehow seen past all my defenses to the person underneath. I'm scared, I whispered. I know, not of you, of this, of wanting something again after I thought I'd never be able to. That's understandable. He lifted one hand slowly, telegraphing the movement, and gently tucked a strand of blonde hair behind my ear. But Charlotte, being scared doesn't mean you're not ready. Sometimes it just means something matters enough to risk the fear. His hand lingered near my face, and I found myself leaning into the touch. It was nothing like Damien's possessive grasping. This was question and answer, invitation rather than demand. What if I break? The words came out broken themselves. What if I can't be what you need, then we'll figure it out together. Sebastian's thumb traced my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I'm not asking you to be anything other than yourself, Charlotte. The real you, not some performance or mask, just you. I closed the distance between us, pressing my forehead to his. We stayed like that, breathing the same air, existing in a moment that felt suspended outside of time. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, neither do I. Not really. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can figure it out as we go. The rain that had been threatening finally arrived. Fat drops that quickly became a downpour. We ran back toward the cabins, laughing, completely soaked within minutes. When we reached Sebastian's house, we grabbed towels while I stood dragging on his doormat. You should stay, he said, handing me a towel. The guest room, I mean, it's late and the rain. Sebastian, I cut off his rambling, which was endearing coming from someone usually so composed. I'd like to stay. Something in his expression shifted, hope mixed with careful restraint. Okay, good. I'll make tea. You always make tea when you're nervous, I observed. I'm an alpha king who controls an entire territory, and you make me nervous, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Sue me. I laughed, really laughed, and the sound felt foreign and wonderful in my throat. When was the last time I'd laughed like that? Before Damien, certainly. Maybe before I'd even met him. We ended up on the couch again, tea growing cold as we talked about everything and nothing. Sebastian told me about his plans for expanding the pack's territory, his dreams of building a school that could serve multiple surrounding packs. I told him about my love of old books, my half-forgotten dream of teaching. You could do that here, he said. Teach. We have children who need education, and Sarah's been running the school alone. She'd love the help. I don't have any clear's throat credentials. You have passion and knowledge and patience. The rest can be figured out. He shifted closer, his arm draped along the back of the couch behind me. You don't have to decide now, just consider it. Consider staying, really staying, not just hiding. I'm not hiding anymore, I said softly. That ended when Damon left. Then what are you doing? I thought about it, trying to articulate the change that had been happening inside me. Living, I think. Actually living instead of just surviving. Good. His fingers found mine, lacing together with careful deliberation. Because you deserve to live, Charlotte, fully, joyfully, without constantly looking over your shoulder. We fell asleep there on the couch, tangled together under a blanket, the rain drumming on the roof like a lullaby. When I woke near dawn, I found Sebastian watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. "Hi," I whispered. "Hi," he brushed hair from my face. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in years. Me, too." The moment stretched fragile and perfect. Outside, birds were beginning their morning songs. Inside, something new was beginning too. Something that felt like hope taking root. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt dangerously close to happiness. I started helping Sarah at the school 3 days a week, discovering I had a natural rapport with the children. Clear's throat, they didn't care about my past or my scars. They just wanted someone's listened and made learning fun. Sebastian and I grew closer in incremental ways. Shared meals became routine. Morning coffee on his porch turned into long conversations that lasted until lunch. Pack meetings where I started offering opinions, finding my voice. Eden watched our developing relationship with barely concealed delight. "I knew it," she said one afternoon while we weeded her garden. "From the moment he saw you, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were his mate, his real one." Clear's throat, she sat back on her heels, wiping dirt from her hands. "I've known Sebastian for 8 years, Charlotte. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. It scares me," I admitted. "How much I feel how quickly it happened." "Love doesn't follow timelines," Eden said gently. "It just is. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept it." That evening, Sebastian appeared at my cabin with a nervous energy I'd never seen in him before. "Walk with me." We ended up back at the creek, our spot as it had become. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. "I need to tell you something," Sebastian said, pacing along the water's edge. "And I don't want you to feel pressured, but I also can't keep it inside anymore." My heart kicked into overdrive. "Okay." He stopped, turned to face me fully. "You're my mate, Charlotte. My true mate. I've known since that first day in the forest. But I didn't want to tell you because you just escaped one bond, and I didn't want to trap you in another. But the council will be holding the annual Alpha Gathering next month, and there are expectations, politics, and I need you to know where I stand before any of that matters." I stared at him, processing. "You've known for weeks since the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. Sebastian." I closed the distance between us. "I've known too. Maybe not as clearly. Not with alpha instincts, but I felt it. Feel it every time you're near." His breath caught. "You do?" Instead of answering with words, I kissed him. It was nothing like the kisses Damien had taken. Those had been about power and possession. Clear's throat. This was choice and gift and promise all at once. Sebastian's arms came around me carefully, holding me like something precious. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he said simply, completely terrifyingly. "And I will spend every day proving that love doesn't have to hurt, that it can be safe and joyful and free." Tears streamed down my face, but for once they were happy. "I love you too. I didn't think I could ever say those words again, but I do. I love you." We stood there as night fell around us, wrapped in each other, and the promise of something beautiful finally beginning. The Alpha Gathering was held in neutral territory, a sprawling estate that had served as a meeting place for pack leaders for over a century. Sebastian and I arrived a crisp autumn morning, the trees ablaze with red and gold, my stomach twisted with nerves. "You don't have to come to any of the formal sessions," Sebastian said as we pulled up the long driveway. "You can stay in our rooms, explore the grounds, whatever makes you comfortable." "No." I straightened my shoulders, smoothing down the deep green dress Eden had helped me choose. "I'm your mate. I should be there." His hand found mine, squeezed gently. "Only if you're ready. There's no shame in taking time, but I was ready. Or at least I was ready to try." The estate was already bustling with activity. Alphas from across the region had gathered along with their mates, betas, and key pack members. I recognized some faces from the council hearing. Miriam was there along with several other officials, and then I saw others I didn't know. Powerful wolves who turned to assess us as we entered. Sebastian's presence beside me was steady grounding. He introduced me to Alpha after Alpha, never with apology or explanation, simply as Charlotte, my mate. Some received the news with warm congratulations, others with thinly veiled skepticism. A human-adjacent Omega made it to one of the strongest alphas in the region raised eyebrows. I held my head high and met every gaze with the quiet strength I'd been rebuilding. The first formal session was a political nightmare. Discussions of territory disputes, trade agreements, pack alliances. I sat beside Sebastian, taking mental notes, occasionally leaning in to whisper observations. He valued my input, I'd learned, found my outside perspective useful. During a break, I excused myself to find the restroom. The estate was a maze of hallways, and I got turned around twice before finally finding what I was looking for. On my way back, I heard voices from an open door, a private parlor where several alphas had gathered. "Sebastian's gone soft," one voice said, thick with disdain. "Taking in a runaway Omega, making her his mate. She's a liability. I heard she's unstable," another added. That her previous alpha had to file council complaints and Sebastian defended her. A third voice, female this time, went against another alpha for some damaged little Omega. "It's beneath him. I should have kept walking, should have ignored them. But something in me had changed during my time at Crescent Ridge. I'd found my voice and I was learning to use it." I stepped into the doorway. "Damaged? Yes. Little debatable, but I'm standing right here. So, if you're going to insult me, at least have the courage to do it to my face." The three alphas, 2 men and a woman I didn't recognize, turned to stare at me. The woman recovered first, her smile sharp. "We were simply concerned for Alpha Sebastian's judgment." "Were you?" I entered the room fully, channeling every lesson Sebastian had taught me about presence and power because it sounded more like gossip and prejudice. My previous alpha was abusive. The council investigated and ruled in my favor. "Those are facts. What you're spreading are lies. You have nerve," one of the men said, standing. He was massive, easily twice my size, speaking to your betters that way. "My betters?" I held my ground even as my heart raced. "You may be alphas, but that doesn't make you better than anyone. It makes you leaders, or at least it should. Leaders who spread rumors about abuse survivors aren't better. They're just cruel. Enough." Sebastian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He appeared behind me, one hand settling protectively on my shoulder. "Charlotte speaks truth. Perhaps you should examine why that makes you uncomfortable." The massive alpha's face flushed red. "Sebastian, surely you don't. I don't tolerate disrespect toward my mate, no matter who's offering it." Sebastian's tone could have frozen fire. "Charlotte survived what would have broken weaker wolves. She rebuilt herself from nothing. That's not damage, that's strength. If you can't see that, the problem isn't with her." The female alpha had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "We meant no offense, and yet offense was given." Sebastian guided me out of the room, his hand never leaving my shoulder. Once we were alone in the hallway, he turned to face me. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." And surprisingly, I was. I stood up for myself. "You did." Pride shone in his eyes. "You were magnificent." I was terrified. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear, Charlotte. It's acting despite it." He cupped my face gently. "You continued to amaze me." The rest of the gathering passed in a blur of meetings and social events. Some wolves remained skeptical of our bond, but others, particularly those who'd witnessed my confrontation with the 3 alphas, began to treat me with respect. Miriam went out of her way to speak with me, sharing her own story of surviving a difficult first mate before finding happiness later in life. "You're good for him," she told me during a quiet moment on the estate's terrace. Sebastian needed someone who could match his strength without competing with it, someone who understands the weight of power because they've survived its misuse. "I'm still learning," I admitted. "We all are. That's the secret they don't tell you. No one actually knows what they're doing. We're all just trying our best and hoping it's enough." On our last night at the gathering, Sebastian and I escaped the crowds and found a quiet garden behind the estate. Fairy lights had been strung between the trees, creating a canopy of stars. "Dance with me," Sebastian said, pulling me close. Even though there was no music, we swayed together in the silence, and I realized this was what home felt like. Not a place, but a person, Clear's throat a choice, a commitment to building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. "Marry me," Sebastian whispered against my hair. I pulled back to look at him, certain I'd misheard. "What? Marry me? Bond with me officially in front of the pack and the council and everyone. Not because we have to, but because I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours." He smiled, vulnerable and hopeful. "Unless it's too soon, I don't want to pressure." "Yes." The word came out clear and strong. "Yes, Sebastian, I'll marry you." His kiss was answer and celebration and promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he produced a small velvet box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for a week," he admitted, opening it to reveal a simple silver band with a small blue stone. "It's not elaborate, but it's perfect." I held out my hand and he slid the ring onto my finger. It fit like it had been made for me. We returned to Crescent Ridge 3 days later to find the pack had organized a welcome home celebration. The main square was decorated with lanterns and flowers, tables laden with food, children running wild with excitement. Eden pulled me into a crushing hug the moment we arrived. I heard, "Congratulations." News travels fast. Wolf telepathy is basically gossip at supernatural speed. She laughed, then stepped back to look at the ring. "Oh, Charlotte, I'm so happy for you both." The celebration lasted into the night. Pack members congratulated us, shared stories, offered advice, both useful and ridiculous. Sarah presented us with a hand-embroidered quilt she'd been working on in secret. Owen organized an impromptu serenade that was more enthusiastic than melodic. Marcus gave a formal speech about pack bonds and new beginnings that had half the crowd in tears. I stood beside Sebastian, his arm around my waist, and felt the broken pieces inside me finally clicking into place. Not erased. The scars were still there, would always be there, but integrated. Part of my story rather than the whole story. "Thank you," I whispered to Sebastian during a quiet moment. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, and loving her anyway." "Not anyway," he corrected gently. "Because of her, every part, every scar, every moment of strength it took to survive. That's who I love, Charlotte, not some idealized version." The wedding was held a month later on the first snow of winter. The pack house had been transformed into something magical. Evergreen boughs and white flowers, candles casting warm light across everything. I wore a simple white dress that Sarah had helped me alter, my blonde hair loose down my back. Eden walked me down the aisle, her hand steady in mine. Sebastian waited at the front, handsome in a dark suit, his eyes bright with emotion. The ceremony itself was a blend of human and wolf traditions. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promises of partnership and respect, of standing together through whatever came. The pack witnesses bore testimony to our bond, speaking of the ways we'd each grown and changed. When it came time to seal the bond officially, Sebastian held my hands and spoke the ancient words that would tie us together on every level, physical, emotional, spiritual. I repeated them back, feeling the magic settle into place like a warm blanket. "I love you," he said. Simple and true. "I love you," I answered. Our kiss was witnessed by the entire pack, celebrated with howls that echoed through the forest. As we walked back down the aisle together, I caught sight of faces I'd come to know and love. Eden crying happy tears, Owen grinning broadly, Marcus standing proud, Sarah beaming with joy. This was my pack now, my family, my home. The reception was loud and joyous, full of dancing and laughter and celebration. At one clear's throat point, Sebastian swept me onto the dance floor for a slow song, and we swayed together as we had in that garden weeks before. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. I thought about the question seriously, about everything I'd been through, everything I'd survived, all the choices that had led me to this moment. "Not a single one," I said, meaning it. "Every terrible thing I survived brought me here to you, to this. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, not even to erase the pain, especially not to erase the pain. It made me who I am. Someone strong enough to accept love, someone brave enough to believe in happiness again." Sebastian pulled me closer, and I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Around us, our pack celebrated. Our future stretched ahead, unknown, but no longer frightening. Because I'd learned something crucial during my time at Crescent Ridge. Home wasn't about the absence of fear or pain. It was about having people who stood with you through it, who saw your scars and called them beautiful, who believed in your strength even when you'd forgotten it yourself. Weeks turned to months. Winter gave way to spring. I settled fully into my role as Luna, working alongside Sebastian to strengthen and grow the pack. The school expanded under my presence, bringing in students from neighboring territories. I'd found my calling in teaching and helping young wolves understand their worth and potential. Eden became my closest friend, the sister I'd never had. Sarah taught me healing arts, both physical and spiritual. Marcus and I developed a warm, sibling-like relationship built on mutual respect and terrible puns. Life wasn't perfect. I still had nightmares sometimes, waking in a panic until Sebastian's arms reminded me where I was. I still struggled with crowds and unexpected touches. But these things were manageable now, no longer defining me. One evening, nearly a year after I'd first arrived at Crescent Ridge, Sebastian and I sat on the porch of our home. He'd insisted we build something new together rather than live in his family house with its complicated memories. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "I have something to tell you," I said, nervous excitement fluttering in my chest. Sebastian turned to me, immediately attentive. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then Sebastian's face transformed with joy, so pure it took my breath away. He pulled me close, careful and gentle, pressing kisses to my hair, my forehead, my lips. "Really?" His voice was thick with emotion. "Really? Sarah confirmed it this morning." I laughed through happy tears. "We're going to be parents. I love you," he said fiercely. "Both of you, all of us, this family we're building. I love you too." I curled into his embrace, safe and whole, and finally truly home. The past couldn't be changed, the scars I carried would never fully disappear. But they were part of me now, woven into the tapestry of who I'd become, someone who'd survived darkness and chosen light, someone who'd lost everything and built something beautiful from the ruins. I'd come to